What do you think of Labour's treatment of Diane Abbott?
Well, I think it says everything about Keir Starmer, actually, that he's all over the place. He flips and then he flops. And I think as soon as he's put under pressure, he's pushed around. And he's been pushed around this time by Angela Rayner. And that's one thing. But being a Prime Minister of this country is probably the most high-pressure job in this country, and probably one of the most high pressure in the world. And how will he cope when he's on a world stage with all the pressures that brings? So I think it says everything about Keir Starmer and many things about the Labour Party, and there's huge division within that party.
I think a lot of people would say that Rishi Sunak's been pushed around, be it on sacking Lee Anderson or Suella Braverman or various policy points. Is that a fair criticism when you're serving under Rishi Sunak?
I don't think so. I think he did what he thought was right on those occasions, and clearly people will have different views, but I think he's been very strong on these issues and very strong on other things that are really important to people, like the economy, where the economy, if you remember 18 months ago, was really suffering, predicted to go into recession, and inflation was 11.1%, and he said, we're going to sort this, and 18 months later, that's what's happened. And he's been very clear, very consistent, and he's set his stall out to deliver on those priorities, and we're in a much better place. The economy is growing and inflation is now 2.3%. It shows you that he has got the courage of his convictions.
Yeah, but what you're talking about, is the economy on a spreadsheet. People actually don't feel better off.
Well, that's interesting, and I get that. It does take time for people to feel the benefits of it, but I've been campaigning today in my constituency. I'm talking to small businesses. They're definitely seeing an improvement in terms of their income, in terms of footfall, which would tend to indicate that people are feeling happier, but this will improve over time. We've seen 10 months now where real incomes are increasing, and that's after inflation, of course, and we're seeing taxes dropping. The average person, £900 tax reduction this year, and we'll see, hopefully, interest rates falling towards the middle of the year. So people will increasingly feel better about life and have more money to spend, which is then good for the economy, which is then a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we see better times ahead, in my view.
It just feels like, I guess I just want to know how morale is, because you have come up with some eye-catching policies, whether people like them or not, but the polls aren't changing. Why is Rishi Sunak still so unpopular?
Well, one thing we know on the doorstep is certainly there are lots of undecided people. They'll make their mind up in the weeks to come. I think those policies will have an effect. That gap will narrow. We've seen a poll recently of 12 points difference rather than the 20 points difference.
One poll.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should make sure that we look at things in a wider context. But look at the most recent full poll we've had, the local elections. There was 9-point difference between ourselves and the Labour Party. So this is closer than people give it credit for, I think. But also we've seen in recent days, Keir Starmer has shown his true colours. He's come out and said, I am a socialist. I'm an avowed socialist. And the people, I'm sure, that certainly in my constituency and others around the country who are thinking of voting for Keir Starmer will think twice on the basis of that, because that will inevitably mean, when push comes to shove, when you've got the unions pushing for more money, when you've got different people in his party pushing for more public spending, it'll be the tax lever that he grabs for, because that's what socialists do. And what we need is public sector spending restraint, which is what we will offer, and we are already seeing lower taxes and a smaller state.
Well, it's a record high tax
people have a clear choice on. Sorry.
I was saying, you talk about taxes. Under the Tories, we're now looking at a record high tax burden.
Well, we've spent a huge amount over the last few years, of course, which I think most people recognise, about £500 billion to get us through COVID and the cost of living crisis, and that has to be paid for. But if you look at the way we've done that, the average earner in the UK has got a record low in terms of level of taxes, a 50-year low in terms of their taxes, lower than the US, lower than Germany, lower than France. That's how the Prime Minister's dealt with this. That's how the Chancellor's dealt with this. So for many people, taxes are lower than ever.
The IFS says income growth in the last 15 years has been the worst in generations. 15 years, that's the Tory rule.
It's been very tough, but you've got to take into account the fact those are affected by the COVID crisis and affected by the cost of living crisis. That is true, but we have turned the corner, and people will increasingly feel the benefits of that, of a growing economy, of inflation under control. Those are the things that really hit people particularly those on low incomes.
Do you think Rishi Sunak's a popular Prime Minister?
I think he will be increasingly popular. I think he's had to take some very difficult decisions. Those things are never popular, of course, in terms of putting up taxes, as you say, to pay for the huge amount of spending we've committed to help businesses. You've got to remember back in 2020, the predictions were, at the start of the COVID crisis, predictions were 600,000 businesses going out of business. We did not see that because of the support, the COVID loans and the grants and all those things. Millions
It's quite
of people
a tight time frame, though, isn't it? 5 weeks to become popular.
Yeah, listen, but we've got to make the case. And I think people will see increasingly that clear blue water between what we're saying in terms of a low-tax economy, a productive economy, and what Labour is saying, which is more spending on public services. That's what they're going to commit to. And that's going to be expensive, and that ultimately will mean black holes in their finances, £38.5 billion black hole. That's identified by the Treasury officials, not by politicians like me. That gap's got to be filled, and that's going to be about £2,000 to the average household in terms of extra taxes. That's the question they've got to answer.